State Attorney General Letitia James telling CBS 6 the Department of Justice is conducting a, quote, baseless battle in terms of the FBI investigating her real estate transactions. This coming in a conversation she had today with our Tom Meshin, who is here now. Tom, you touched on a few topics, also talking about Andrew Cuomo as well.
Yes, as you know, he was in the news just last night. The Department of Justice has opened a criminal investigation into former Governor Cuomo for lying to Congress about his decisions during the pandemic. Team Cuomo has called it lawfare and election interference. With that said, Letitia James has had her own battles with Cuomo, first releasing the report in 2021, alleging Cuomo sexually harassed 11 women, then later finding that Cuomo undercounted COVID-19 deaths in nursing homes, all of which the Cuomo team has denied, has said he's never been found guilty of. Today, Letitia James asked about herself and Cuomo being the focus of Trump administration DOJ investigations.
These battles are retribution. These battles are baseless. These battles are as a result of all of the work that I have done. We just got a preliminary injunction just a few hours ago against the dismantling of HHS.
Yes. Other specific reaction to the DOJ look going after him?
None whatsoever.
That was about Cuomo. James says the investigations into her real estate dealings are baseless. Her office recently confirmed to us they're planning to use both private and state legal defense funds in response. It all comes as Republicans mainly question $10 million in state budget for services and expenses relating to the cost of outside legal services for state workers. Do you think it's a fair use of the taxpayer money?
So, the public officers law has been in existence for a long time. And public officers law has reimbursed a number of individuals, including law enforcement, including a wide number of state workers. And so it's nothing new.
James says she's focused on combating any administration that will take away funds from New Yorkers. She's saying Trump's executive orders are arbitrary and capricious at this time.
Arbitrary and capricious sounds like a real attorney. Definitely the kind of words you would hear if you hung around a courtroom, any courtroom in the United States. That's just normal legal jargon. And of course, we're talking about sweet Letitia James, the current, soon-to-be former Attorney General of the state of New York. Now, remind you, this is the same woman who was screaming every chance she could that, hey, no one is above the law. Well, guess what, my friends? Letitia James is about to find this out for herself the hard way. This is the same Letitia James that spent her entire career targeting and going after via lawfare the current President Donald Trump. And of course, now she's facing a firestorm of allegations, and the allegations against her continue to only grow. False mortgage filings, misuse of government staff, and potential misrepresentations on official government documents. I would not want to be Letitia James. That I can guarantee. This is the same woman who went after, and I would say persecuted, Donald Trump and his family for alleged mortgage fraud. And yet, apparently, she has been engaging in the same type of fraud herself. She claimed that a Virginia home was her personal residence, aka her principal residence, and we've talked about it on this channel many times, what we call here in the state of Florida a domicile. Very interesting how she's going to explain away at some point in court, hey, how can you be the sitting attorney general from New York and yet at the same time you're swearing in federal documents that you are a resident of the state of Virginia? Remember, you cannot be the attorney general in the state of New York unless you reside in the state of New York. So we have this federal investigation that is looming right now, and now more news media, more legacy news media is picking up this story of Letitia James, and it finally has made it to the Wall Street Journal. All right, folks, as you see on your screen, we're going to be talking about this recent article in the Wall Street Journal. The author of this article is by Corinne Ramey, titled Donald Trump and Letitia James Raise Stakes in Bitter Feud. Now, I want to be clear on the front end. I talk about in the title that this was effectively an accident by the Wall Street Journal. And by that, I mean the following. Oftentimes, the legacy media, if you will, they kind of stumble into the truth. And their attempt to just kind of make this feud seem like it's just your normal feud that politicians get into, I think what they end up doing is accidentally exposing the fact that Letitia James has overplayed her hand. Letitia James has been engaging in lawfare, and this lawfare has backfired on her and, frankly, many other individuals who are going to go down, as they should go down, because of their malfeasance. Now, I'm not saying that the Wall Street Journal is some type of Donald Trump or pro-Donald Trump magazine or news agency, because they are not. But again, without even realizing it, they have laid out a narrative in this article that frankly reveals just how politically driven and self-destructive this entire episode has been for Letitia James and, by extension, the entire Democrat Party. So take a look at this with me and tell me if you agree. Justice Department investigates New York's Attorney General as she leads Democratic challenges to the president's policies. New York's most bitter political feud has taken a high-stakes turn. Again, they're really embellishing this, right? President Trump and New York Attorney General Letitia James have sparred and outside of the courtroom for years. Remember, Letitia James, her entire platform when she originally ran for Attorney General from New York was all about getting Trump. The outspoken outer borough native New Yorkers have clashed over policies, political ambitions, and her scrutiny of his real estate empire. He has called her a racist and on Sunday, quote, grossly incompetent, end quote. She says she has said he is an illegitimate president and accused him of, quote, staggering fraud, end quote. What is really crazy about this is that this quote unquote staggering fraud is not from President Donald Trump, but clearly, if the allegations are true, that has been made by Sam Antar and other individuals and has been outlined so eloquently in the referral to the Department of Justice, the person engaging in staggering fraud, ladies and gentlemen, is none other than New Yorker's own Letitia James. Now, Trump's return to the White House has handed him the backing of the Justice Department. James, meanwhile, is leading Democratic attorney generals challenging Trump's policies. I would word it this way. I would say she thinks she's going to get out of jail free, if you will, by basically continuing to hammer Donald Trump. At least that's what it looks like her defense is at this particular junction. In her 20 lawsuits so far, she has notched notable wins, at least according to this article, including pausing Trump's efforts to end birthright citizenship and blocking an administration order to freeze federal funding. Both of them are take no prisoners, said the Reverend Al Sharpton, who knows Trump and James. Their motives are totally opposite, but their determinations are identical. And I have to say, as a caveat, I would not give much bearing to anything that the so-called Reverend Al Sharpton has to say. But that's a story for another day. The latest chapter in the feud has come in the form of federal investigations into allegations that James committed mortgage fraud. She is a horrible human being, and I think she's a total crook, Trump said of James in the Oval Office earlier this month. And of course, on your screen, you can see a picture of the beautiful Letitia James right there with that famous grin on her face. I don't think, ladies and gentlemen, she's going to be smiling, grinning, whatever, much longer. Trump recently posted on social media about the accusations, which have circulated in right-wing circles for years. The next day, the head of the Federal Housing Agency sent a letter to the Justice Department recommending officials investigate reports that James had lied on real estate filings. Now, we have went over this letter ad nauseum on this particular channel. And if you don't remember that letter, please go through the videos that I have on my channel and take a listen for yourself. It is interesting to say the least. Federal Bureau of Investigation Director Kesh Patel on Sunday confirmed the investigation into James on Fox News, calling it, quote, a case of great public importance, end quote. Now, I have said, as a side note, ladies and gentlemen, many times that I really wished, at least at first, that President Trump would simply ignore all the lawfare that has happened to him and basically just continue on with the business of the country. But I have definitely did a quick U-turn on my thinking on that. The reason for that is we have to stop this lawfare. We have to make sure that this lawfare never rears its ugly head again. This type of behavior engaged in by former President Joe Biden and his cronies, specifically Letitia James, Fani Willis, Nathan Wade, has to be stopped. And of course, I have to include Alvin Bragg into that circle. There has to be a message sent so strong and so hard that is basically a warning for the ages that if you choose to impede the right of Americans to choose who they want to be their president by using this lawfare, by using the Department of Justice, by misusing what the law was intended for, there are going to be consequences to pay, especially because sooner or later, another party, another administration always comes to power. At the heart of the allegations is a power of attorney document on which James inaccurately listed a Norfolk, Virginia home as her primary residence. Now, remember this primary residence here, folks. In Florida, we call it a domicile. You can only have one domicile, one primary residence in the world. You can have as many residents as you want. That's fine, no problem. But you can only officially have one primary residence. And this article kind of glosses over the fact, but again, we have talked about it on this channel, and I will continue to talk about it, is the fact that Letitia James swore in documents that her primary resident was this Norfolk, Virginia home, which entitled her essentially to cheaper rates on the mortgage. It entitled her to certain benefits that she was not entitled to. And the crazy, nutty, strange things about all this is exactly the type of behavior that she persecuted Donald Trump and his family over. As a matter of fact, if you remember, she secured a substantial verdict against Donald Trump and his businesses. I believe it's to the tune of something around $454 million, in which President Trump and his businesses have to pay $100,000 plus a day in just the interest payments. And he will never get that money back in the interest payments, even if and when, in my opinion, this ridiculous verdict is overturned one day in the courts. One other thing of note pertaining to this quote unquote primary residence is that you cannot be the current New York Attorney General if you are not residing in the state of New York. There are a bunch of issues and problems with the claims that Letitia James made on these federal documents. The article continues, and a 2001 certificate for her Brooklyn property that lists a different number of units than the other filings. Remember that property in Brooklyn that is actually a 5-unit dwelling, and yet she said, hey, it's only a 4-dwelling unit, again, entitling her to additional savings, additional money that she was not otherwise entitled to. The housing agency letter outlining the allegation says that according to media reports, James appeared to have falsified records in order to meet certain lending requirements and receive favorable loan terms. Now, she hired a lawyer named Abby Lowe. He's a high-profile, very visible, very public attorney. So the article says Abby Lowe said in a letter to the Justice Department that she made clear that Virginia probably wasn't her primary residence on other filings, including a loan application. He said, meaning her attorney, said that other documents related to the Brooklyn residence reflected how the property has been used since James bought it. Again, this is kind of smoke and mirrors type of things, because some of the documents her own attorney referred to that allegedly gets Letitia James out of jail free card, so to speak, is not really what he says it is, because it is a document that actually pertains to an email that was before the actual signing of the documents that are in question pertaining to the home in Virginia. So she really has a lot of explaining to do, folks. He said that other documents related to the Brooklyn residence reflect how the property has been used since James bought it. We have successfully blocked some of the administration's most horrible initiatives, which is why they are coming after me. James said this in a town hall this month. The picture you see on your screen, by the way, this is another one of these pictures that kind of went viral, at least at the time it did, in which you have AG Letitia James sitting back behind Donald Trump as he's being hammered in New York courts. Specifically, I believe this was one of the days that Donald Trump was in court for civil fraud in 2023. Trump and Jones once ran in separate circles. James, now 66 years old, climbed the local political ladder starting as a Brooklyn City Council member. Trump, now 78, who built his initial fortune in New York City's 5 boroughs, was at the same time expanding his international profile. When James campaigned for Attorney General in 2018, she made Trump her central foil, pledging to, quote, be a real pain in the ass, end quote, if elected. And of course, she has done everything, anything in her power to hold up that campaign pledge, which, by the way, should not be allowed in campaigns. Can you imagine being electing our candidates, but promising to go after and incarcerate another human being? Absolutely unconscionable. She delivered on her promise, filing about 100 lawsuits against the Trump administration. And that, so far, ladies and gentlemen, is just to date. It was her multi-year probe into Trump's family business that most provoked the president's ire. James opened the investigation in 2019 after former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen, we remember Michael Cohen, aka Donald Trump's fixer, testified before Congress that the real estate mogul inflated his net worth to gain favorable insurance and loan terms. Again, the irony has to be pointed out. This is the same type of behavior, clearly, that Letitia James has been engaging in, or at least it has appeared she has been engaging in the same type of malfeasance. The biggest difference between Donald Trump and Letitia James, as far as the conduct that we're discussing, was that the conduct between Letitia James was between her and the federal government, basically lying so that she could qualify for the terms of these discounted rates and basically being able to qualify for these mortgages in the first place. Where on the other hand, President Donald Trump, he was dealing with a very sophisticated and savvy real estate contract with a very sophisticated investor, specifically the banks that he was dealing with. Also, anytime that President Trump was dealing with these different banks, there were always, as is the standard practice, cover letters basically saying, hey, here's what I believe to be true. Here's what I believe to be the value. But Mr. or Miss Bank, you need to do your own due diligence, your own homework, and make sure that you agree with what I think is the reality pertaining to a particular property. It's really just that simple. Those are the things that make up his empire, said George Arts, a New York political consultant. He takes that very personally. And of course, on your screen here, you can see a teleprompter screen at a James news conference after the civil fraud judgment against Trump was announced. You can see the screen says, today we are holding Donald Trump accountable. How about that, huh? I'm very, very confident that Donald Trump is going to have the chance to repay the favor, if you will. James sued Trump for civil fraud in 2022. At trial, James often watched stone-faced. Well, she was stone-faced or she was smiling from the court gallery. From the witness stand, Trump called her a political hack and derided her case as a witch hunt. James won, with a judge awarding the state nearly a $500 million judgment against Trump and his family businesses for inflating his assets on financial statements. The ruling put pressure on Trump's finances as he secured a bond to mount an appeal, which is pending in the state of New York, and it does vary state to state. When you lose a civil verdict, as Donald Trump did, in order to appeal, in order to appeal without having execution going forth on a particular property, you have to put up generally a cash bond for the appeal. Otherwise, in this particular case, what you could theoretically have happen is you could have the state of New York, aka Letitia James, going after Donald Trump's businesses to physically take possession of the different buildings that she was just very giddy about taking. She made those comments many, many times, as you probably remember. And really, it's just an abomination that any individual would have to put up $454 million, ever how much the exact amount was, in order to simply appeal an outrageous verdict like this. And remember this, as far as putting pressure on anyone's finances, even someone like Donald Trump, who's worth billions of dollars at this particular time, depending on what report you went with, he might have been worth maybe at least $10 billion with True Social and that empire. He's worth many more billions of dollars as a result of that venture. But in relation to the money he had at the time this original verdict came out, even though he's worth, say, $10 billion, you have to understand $454 million in cash is very difficult to come up with, even for a man as wealthy as Donald Trump, because that is cash. Generally speaking, most people that are this wealthy have their money tied up in assets and properties and buildings that basically you can't readily turn over or convert to cash. And that was one of the biggest problems President Trump was facing at the particular time. And thank God he was able to secure this bond pending this appeal. Some Trump allies have drawn parallels between the fraud allegations against James and her case against the president. Yeah, you think? James is up for re-election next year. Political observers said the public feud is for now mutually beneficial. I just totally disagree with that, ladies and gentlemen. I'm curious if you disagree with that statement. Most New Yorkers, especially New York Democrats, are looking for someone who will stand up to Donald Trump, says Chris Coffey, a political consultant. On the flip side, fighting against a Democratic black woman attorney general of New York plays well to his base. Write to Corinne Ramey, and there is her email address if you're interested. And again, this was from the Wall Street Journal. Folks, I'm curious if you agree with the statements written here, especially these last two paragraphs. The assertion that somehow this public feud is now mutually beneficial, I don't buy that. I don't believe that. I think this public feud is very, very damaging for New York Attorney General Letitia James. And this other bozo saying that on the flip side, fighting against a Democratic black woman Attorney General of New York plays well to his base. I think that's crazy also. And let's be straight up about it. What is this person basically saying with a wink, wink? In my opinion, he's basically saying Donald Trump's a racist and the people that support Donald Trump are at least a closet racist. They always turn back to that nonsense. That's basically all they can reach in and pull out when the facts don't support whatever ridiculous position they're trying to sell you or sell me. Of course, it has nothing to do with whatever Letitia James' race is, and I'm sure that's to the dismay of many of these what I call woke Democrats. So here's my question for you, ladies and gentlemen. Do you agree or disagree with what I've had to say in this article? Do you agree or disagree with the article itself? If you wouldn't mind, please put a comment in the comment section below and let me know where you fall on this particular issue. I have said before, and I'll say it now, I believe Letitia James' days as the New York Attorney General are numbered. At a minimum, I have predicted for some time that the Governor Hochul, is going to have to use the power that she has as the governor of the state of New York. She's going to have to remove Letitia James. There's no way the state can go forward and conduct business as usual with these type of allegations hanging over its own attorney general, especially once an indictment comes down from the Department of Justice. It is imminent. It is definitely going to happen. And I, for one, plan on being all over this case as it winds its way through the legal system. Remember, other individuals who came up against Donald Trump, please recall the former mayor and state's attorney that we discussed on this program. They came out and they were very vicious and very confrontational, pertaining to Donald Trump there, and Trump, what I call Trump 1.0, aka Donald Trump's first administration. Those two ladies that we've talked about in this program ended up losing their positions. One of them went to jail for 3 years because they got caught engaging in the same type of criminal behavior that's alleged against Letitia James that we discussed here today. It does not bear well for these people that have come forward and accused Donald Trump of criminal wrongdoing. These people that often speak loud and screaming at the top of their lungs, they end up reaping the whirlwind, if you know what I mean. Folks, if you like to support the channel, you like the subjects that I talk about here, please do me a favor, hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel. If you're watching me on YouTube, obviously you can always reach me right here at JR Dukes. If you're on the X platform, simply at Reach JR Dukes is my handle. Everywhere else, True Social, all the other platforms, always at JR Dukes. And of course, my website is jrdukes.com. Appreciate you taking time to join me today. I always say, keep that mind free, never give up. Until next time, I am JR Dukes.